Bonjour, j'ouvre la séance.
Hello, I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 6 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to the order adopted on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, the committee is meeting to begin its study of fairness in the services offered to veterans, francophones and anglophones, men and women, and the LGBTQ+ community. I'd like to welcome our colleagues, Peter Fragiscatos and Mark Dalton.
Taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, so you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in the webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members are entered immediately as active participants. All functionality for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the preceding and verification officer. And when you're speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And when you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. En ce qui concerne la liste des personnes qui
Regarding the list of people who will be speaking, the clerk and myself will do our best, as usual, to maintain the order of priority set out for members, whether they are participating in person or virtually. I would now like to welcome our witnesses. We have from the Department of Veterans Affairs, Stephen Harris, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery Branch, and Amy Meunier, Director General, Centralized Operations Division. Ms. Meunier will make the opening statement. Ms. Meunier, you have 5 minutes starting now for your opening statements. So please turn your microphone on and go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Honorable Committee Middies, thank you for inviting us here today. Our Canadian veterans deserve the best possible services and support that we can provide to them and their families. Our number one priority in serving them is reducing processing times for disability benefit applications and making quality and accurate decisions.
5 to 6 years, we've experienced a 40% increase in disability benefit applications, including an increase of more than 75% in first applications. Despite this, between April 2020 and February of this year, the team has reduced the overall number of pending applications by 36%. In other words, from 48,000 to just over 31,000. And the number of claims beyond our 16-week service standard by 44%, from 22,000 to just over 12,000. I want to thank the members of this committee who have quite rightly focused on timely and effective decisions for veterans, with an additional emphasis on barriers and gaps for groups such as females and francophones. We've made measurable progress in addressing the turnaround times for applications from females and francophone veterans. For example, as of December 2021, we've reduced the average turnaround time for female applicants by 6.9 weeks, and the average turnaround time for francophones by 3.2 weeks. Il y a 2 ans, j'ai été
2 years ago, I was named Director General responsible for the team that processes disability benefit applications. At that time, our team was faced with a workload of disability claims that had never been higher, and a global pandemic had just begun. The one constant during those early months of uncertainty was the dedication and devotion of the team. They understood the importance of continuing to get decisions out the door, and their productivity steadily increased as we brought more staff in the door.
Government announcement of $139 million to extend term funding for another 2 years, we can maintain this momentum and achieve our goals of processing applications within the service standard. A few other highlights I'd like to share. We stood up a team dedicated to processing applications from women to eliminate inequalities in the turnaround times between female and male applicants. Likewise, we've increased our French and bilingual capacity and are now positioned to better support our bilingual and French applicants. We have a dedicated unit that prioritized and processed over 1,000 applications from military sexual trauma survivors. More than $105 million in pain and suffering compensation has been paid to them, and we were able to make those decisions within 30 days on average. Nous travaillons à optimiser.
We are working to automate some of the manual steps in our processes, which will alleviate repetitive tasks, improve information sharing, and, most importantly, improve the client experience. We engaged directly with veterans about their application experience in May of last year through our consultation platform called Let's Talk Veterans. We consulted with veterans about the disability benefit process. The feedback from close to 1,000 veterans was tremendous and has helped us zero in on the very specific challenges for veterans. We are already using this information to make changes.
Tools for our decision makers to connect veteran injuries to service faster and more consistently. These tools are developed with a GBA Plus lens to support consistent, equitable, and transparent decisions, which are inclusive of sex and gender and reflect the most up-to-date medical research. Tout cela pour dire.
All this to say, we are really at a pivotal moment. We know there is a lot more work to do, but we have come a long way, and we are well positioned to get the work done.
Close, I'd like to leave you with this message I recently received from one of our team members. As a veteran myself, I have said since the early days of working at Veterans Affairs Canada, I feel like I am truly at home. I get to tap into my experience in the Canadian Armed Forces and also bring to the role the skills that I developed in my career. I'm happy for the veterans we're serving. I know we are making a difference. I hear it on the phone and I see it in the numbers. And now it's wonderful that we get to continue to make a difference. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ms. Meunier. I know that you're accompanied by Stephen Harris, so now we will move on to questions. I know that Mr. Caputo is absent, so I don't know if it's Mr. Harris who will begin with questions. Oh, rather, it's Ms. Kathy Wagenthal. You have 6 minutes to ask your questions. And you can indicate whether the question is for Mr. Harris or Ms. Meunier. You have the floor, Ms. Wagenthal.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you both for being here. It means a great deal to have this opportunity to follow up on this issue, as I had the privilege and honor of being part of that study when we were looking at the backlog. So it is encouraging, no question. First of all, either one can answer, although I appreciate the brief that was shared. I would like to know, as we go into this, how many of those temporary workers have been retained moving forward? I know there was a step to consider removing them, and the decision was to keep them on, which I think is the right one. But how many have actually been retained at this point in time?
Thank you very much for that question. They've all been retained. Okay. A portion, 168, where we received funds through Budget 21 to retain them, and the remaining terms through the recent government announcement have all been retained.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And with that retaining, I know that a number of them had actually been shifted over from other areas. Have those been replaced in other areas of need within Veterans Affairs?
Yes, they have. Okay. through the hiring process in the summer, when we began to hire in the summer of 2020, we worked with our partners around the department to ensure, as we were moving experienced personnel over to support the reduction of the disability backlog, that they would have sufficient time to replace anyone who had moved over to my section.
Perfect. Okay. You've mentioned that you have increased the ability to deal, let's say, with the Francophone needs of our veterans, those that speak French as their first language. And there is concern around the need for the individuals working with them to have that ability to communicate, especially when you're dealing with something in the medical field. How you do say that they're bilingual. Can you tell me how many of those new hires to deal with this issue, French is their first language?
Thank you for that question. You're absolutely right. Through the process of looking into why there may have been a turnaround time difference between Anglophones and Francophones, we did realize that for some cases, bilingual is sufficient, but we recognize, much like we have English essential positions, there was a strong need to ensure we had sufficient French essential positions. Okay. Currently on staff, we have close to 200 bilingual or French essential individuals. And I can give you the precise number, but I would say it's around 40 to 45 French essential positions.
Okay. And are any of those essential positions in Quebec, directly in Quebec?
Yes, in fact, the majority would be in Quebec City, Saint-Jean, okay, as well as Montreal.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Another question I had, it was in regard to what you shared with us. You talked about the huge load that those that were working, and I do personally want to say thank you to that team that you have. They are remarkable in what they do. But they were discouraged and finding it hard. And then you indicated that as you hired more, there was an increase in productivity within the people who were already serving. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, the impact of having a stronger workforce made on those who were trying desperately to do their jobs well?
Thank you. That's a great question. And as their leader, I worked hard over the last 2 years to ensure that we maintained morale. And sometimes it can seem defeating when you're looking at a large volume of applications. What really helped to augment or increase our capacity is that as we onboarded new staff, they helped us to look at our work in a different way and pose questions and offered us opportunities to be more efficient in our work. And being able to share the workload across a greater number of employees really helped us get into our stride. So I would say in summary, 2 parts. One, more hands on deck to share the load was absolutely helpful, but it is the freshness and spirit of new folks coming on board that really helped bring up the morale.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we see how important it was to do those hires, and the goal still is to remove the backlog, which we still have a significant way to go. And yet there was that initial decision to take away those temporary positions. There's nothing more important than getting this to where this doesn't happen again, which is perhaps unrealistic, but at the same, to have that staff there long term is so key. So what is the plan to move ahead to actually reduce that entire backlog?
Thank you. In the operational environment, and our service standard is 16 weeks, 80% of the time. So it does suggest that there will be a certain number of claims that will take longer than 16 weeks. Our goal is to reduce the backlog and be able to maintain our service standard, meaning that there would never be any greater than 20% in our pending application beyond the service standard. In terms of keeping staff on board, that is one part of our strategic plan. The other part is improving the way we work and augmenting our systems so that we can move through the system much faster.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Menim and Ms. Wagenthal. So right now, I'd like to invite B. Darrell Sanson for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please, Darrell.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Opportunity to share. I'm very pleased with the information you shared with us, Mrs. Meunier. Things are looking up. But I do want to make reference to what my colleague just asked you, or she made a point that I'd like to clarify with you. She said there was a decision to take some of these positions away. I suspect she was making reference to 168. Was there any intention at any time for the department to take those positions away?
No, there was no intent to take those temporary positions away. I would say that as we move through the process and we continue to refine our processes, build automation, become more efficient, we have to continually look at what types of resources we need longer term. And so it was more about thinking through what is actually required. And it was a bit of an iterative process, but the goal was to keep the people we needed.
Thank you very much for that answer and that clarification. I know that the wait time has been a big issue for a number of years, but you shared some numbers that's quite interesting. I think we should look at 40% increase in requests or applications and 75% in first-time application. Could you tell us where these numbers, why are there more demands and more requests for first time, and why do we see such a big climb in applications? What caused that?
I can't be 100% certain, but we certainly do hear feedback, and a few things I would want to point to. One, Veterans Affairs Canada and the government just recently went through an initiative where we wanted to really promote our programs and services. And so it was a large communications effort to ensure people knew what programs they would be available for. With the implementation of Pension for Life, it brought a whole new level of applications in the door. People were more aware of what they may be entitled to. There's the destigmatization to mental health conditions. And so we are seeing a notable rise in those areas. More and more individuals are feeling comfortable to come forward. And finally, I would say that injuries in service manifest over a period of time. And I think we're still seeing elements of Afghanistan coming through, particularly related to those mental health conditions. And so we'll continue to see that ebb and flow. It'll be important that we look at that and we monitor that so we're prepared in the future along the same lines and that we have the supports in place.
Thank you. Now, that new investment that we just announced of $139.6 million to retain those employees, what will that do to help the backlog as we move forward?
Thank you. It's going to help us achieve our goal. We are aiming to have the backlog down to 11,500 in that area by the end of this month. And to have it down to about 4,000 in the early part of 2023, in the January-February timeframe. And from that point forward, it's incumbent upon us to make sure we maintain that workload, meaning that it is always within 16 weeks, but recognizing there will still be a few folks outside of that.
Well, I'd like to take the opportunity, Mrs. Meunier, to thank you and your leadership and your staff for the work that they are doing. It is quite impressive. I realize the backlog. We are hopeful there won't be any backlog when we get to that place that we need to get. But knowing that we have dropped by 50% in the last year, the wait time, and still having such numbers as 40% more application and 75 more first-time application, that is just very good. And I want to thank you on behalf of veterans and our government for the work that you're doing and your staff is doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sampson. Ms. Meunier. Now, for the next 6 minutes, I would invite Mr. Luc Desilets, the second vice chair of the committee, to take the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin by thanking and congratulating the committee for having provided the committee, after my request from February 1st, the numbers we requested for a long time. We could discuss that later. So we have the data before us. A number of years ago, Veterans Affairs didn't have enough bilingual adjudicators. Their ability to take decisions wasn't there for French. It took longer than 16 weeks, of course. Many weeks, many additional weeks. Francophone veterans waited a very long time, too long. In 2018, Francophones waited through 33 additional weeks compared to their Anglophone colleagues for a decision on their file. That's a situation that I saw quickly. It wasn't complicated to see. In my first months on this committee, as a member and as critic for Veterans Affairs, nearly all Quebec veterans I spoke to had waited 2 years. 2 years for a decision for disability benefits. That was unacceptable, of course, unfair. I never stopped hammering on that with the department and with you, Mr. Harris. You must have found me very annoying, but that's life, that's my job. Today, I'm pleased to see the result. It really fills me with good cheer, and I'm optimistic for the future. But when I see that fluctuation, the fluctuation that's existed within for 50 years, perhaps, with backlogs. 2018, 33-week gap. 2019, 16-week gap. 2021, 8-week gap. And from January to February, it's 0.6 weeks. So congratulations to the Francophone team from Montreal mainly, and that bilingual team throughout Quebec and Canada. They've done good work, and congratulations. The key, of course, and my question is, what do we do to keep that standard over time? So my question would be for Ms. Meunier and Mr. Harris. How do you plan to maintain that absence of a gap between Francophones and Anglophones from here to the end of the year and next year?
Merci. Pardon, merci beaucoup.
La question est lancée.
And so there's the question.
Merci beaucoup pour la.
Thank you very much for the question. I hear a lot in my headphones right now. Oh, I think it's okay now. Thank you for the question. I can tell you, Mr. Chair, that I've never found this member annoying at all when he was asking me about backlogs in Francophone applications. It's true that it was totally unacceptable, as he saw, and the resources that we've received, the extension for that hiring, will allow us to ensure that the gap between Francophones and Anglophones is really eliminated. As Ms. Meunier said a little earlier, we are making more improvements in processing. The team we've put in place will help us, I think, and certainly in response to the question from another member earlier, which indicated that we needed to hire people who are Francophone, not just bilingual, because of the complexity in interpreting Francophone files, medical terms. I think it's recognized that we can't necessarily depend on bilingual people. We need nurses and others who make decisions, who are very strong in French, very comfortable with medical terms.
Je sais pas si Mme Meunier.
I don't know if Ms. Meunier wants to add something.
Just in addition to what my colleague mentioned, what we're doing over the next short while is ensuring that we are accurately tracking the requirements for French staff members. And for example, the number of applications that come in from Francophones is one number, but we also have a significant number of applications from Anglophones. But depending on where they served over their military career, half of their service health records could comport French language material. And so we were not capturing the workload or required workload associated with that. We are now going to start trying to track that. That will better position us to ensure we are always ahead and beyond the French needs, so that we are always stronger than what is coming in the door.
Parfait, merci.
Great, thank you. Ms. Meunier, you referred to the $140 million. We're talking about temporary employment, however. That troubles me, because the problem could come up again. Why temporary positions? If it's 50%, why not decrease the number of employees and have them full-time? It seems it would be a question of effectiveness. Mr. Desilets, I apologize. Your time is up, but you will have another turn, so you can ask your question at that time. So now,
MP Rachel Blaney to ask questions for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I always appreciate your leadership and your signs keeping us on track. I just want to commend that as well. Again, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. I guess I'm going to start first just with a statement, and then I'll move on to a question. I just want to say, when we're talking about backlogs, I am still very concerned. I don't think it's being addressed the way it should be. I think the fact that these are still temporary workers and not permanent workers should be concerning for all of us. And I know that just recently I was CC'd in an email that was given to the minister that talked about a veteran who heard from VAC when they called him back that his file had not even been given an adjudicator after 32 weeks of waiting, and that he was still in the queue. And what he was literally told was that he could wait up to another 18 months to even have it adjudicated, and that the person told her that if he was dying, it could speed it up. So I want to put that on the record, because I don't believe that veterans are being treated fairly. I don't trust the numbers you're giving me. I'm just telling you straight up, because I'm hearing too many of these kind of stories. So my first question is around the consultation process with veterans through Let's Talk Veterans. I'm just wondering if we could hear a little bit about what are the specific changes that were referred to, and could we have an example of what those changes are?
Thank you for that question. So as I mentioned, there were about 853 participants in that survey. And what we realized through that were a few things. And a lot of the questions were predominantly related to what's the experience from your end? Where are the biggest obstacles and challenges? What was a surprise to us is that not as many veterans as we would have thought were aware of My VAC account, which is a faster way to apply for disability benefits. So we are now going to really ramp up our information and communication related to applying for My VAC account. As I'm sure you've heard in your business, the medical questionnaires and working with treating health professionals can be a bit of a challenge. We use the term diagnosis regularly, but that actually means a confirmed diagnosis from a medical professional. And so that may seem clear. We now know that's not crystal clear. And so some of the changes we'll be doing up front is more plain language, user-friendly material up front, working more closely with our intake staff where veterans can have dialogue and make sure they better understand what's required. More importantly, veterans were loud and clear. They want to know when their application is complete. And so they gave us some examples of timeframes they thought would be acceptable in order to advise them if an application is complete. We're working with our My VAC account partners within Veterans Affairs Canada to improve what a veteran would see in their application, more granularity in terms of the stage and what's happening with their application at that point in time. So those would be a few examples that I would offer.
So I'm also wondering if you said about 1,000 veterans participated in the consultations. Could we get something to the committee that talks about the demographic breakdown of the participants? For example, like how many men, how many women, geographical location, age, and of course, we're talking here specifically today about French-speaking veterans and the services that they receive, and also the LGBT Q2 plus community. So if that could be included in that as well, that would be helpful. And I guess the other part of my question is, were there any specific changes to better serve based on this information to serve the LGBTQ community or the French community of veterans that are receiving services? And if it didn't come through this, what is the process of making sure that services are more friendly and consistent for those particular stakeholder groups?
Thank you. I have some demographics here, but as part of the formal process of Let's Talk Veterans, we will be publishing the fulsome report with all those demographics. But just quickly, I would highlight that there were 76% male, 21% female, 84% were English, and 16% French. So that's fairly representative of the applications we do see. In terms of how do we better provide supports and better work with different cohorts or segments of a veteran population, through a variety of ways, through surveys and consultations like we just did, through direct feedback from veterans. But one example I would offer is that, we don't actually ask you on the application form what your sexual orientation or preferences are. But through our experience with the Purge class action, we worked very closely with many survivors of that. And through that process, we gleaned quite a bit about what we could change to be a much more effective trauma-informed organization. And so we have already implemented trauma-informed training for all of our decision makers and frontline staff. And so that will continue on. So that would be a good example of some of the things that we are already doing following feedback from direct veterans.
And I would just close by saying that one of the challenges that we've heard from numerous veterans is the MyVac account can only be accessed by themselves, and that they cannot give perhaps the ability of a caregiver to help them access that or to access that. And that can provide a huge amount of challenge. So I just hope, and maybe I'll come back to this in my next round, how can we make that more accessible? Because that is closing doors. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blenay, and thank you also for your, pour vos compliments.
For your compliments, it's a great pleasure, and thank you, Ms. Meunier.
We're going to go for a question during 5 minutes, and I'd like to invite the Honorable MP Anna Roberts for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, first of all, I want to thank you for your service. It is very commendable. So here's my question, and being a newbie, I might be out of line, but I want to ask something. What experience can you draw? You stated that you've been there for 2 years, and the work sounds amazing. But what experiences have you drawn to ensure that moving forward, we don't incur the backlog that we have of the past?
That's a great question. Being able to better anticipate the types of applications that are coming forward and the volume of applications, understanding the cause and effect of new programs coming into place, and the communication around that, to be better prepared for that when there is an increase or some, strong publicity around new programs. We do see a surge, and so I that would be one takeaway, that we anticipate that a little more effectively. I've also realized over the last 2 years that on the surface, it may appear that two claims look exactly the same. And the reality is individuals, situations, circumstances, and health parameters and criteria are very different when you dig into the file and you get into it. Also ensuring that we have access to up-to-date medical information and modern tools so that it does make it easier for our decision makers to connect injuries to service more consistently. Those would be two things I would say would position us very well going forward. And that's what we're doing today. And that's why I feel that way, because it's working now. And so I would hope to continue to build.
So you said that the medical records, is there not a database where they could be accessed immediately, or is there a time lapse? Why is there such I don't understand about the medical records. Maybe you could explain that to me.
Sure. When someone serves in the Canadian Armed Forces or the RCMP throughout their career, there are service records related to where they served overseas or across Canada, as well as all of the health information associated with their time. It is either held by the Canadian Armed Forces, but after a certain period of time, I think it's 2 years, it's moved over to Library and Archives Canada. When someone applies to Veterans Affairs Canada, we go to either of those organizations or the RCMP to receive a copy of that information to assist us in making the decision. So we have formal processes with those organizations. Recently, we are working with the Canadian Armed Forces, and we have 50 decision makers who have direct access to the Canadian Forces Health Information System. And so it's just getting going, that direct access. We're working through kinks, trial and error. But that would be a much faster and over time, it will become a much more effective way for us to go in and target the information we're looking for in real time.
So I just want to ask as well, has this pandemic created issues with the backlog? And if so, what plans are in place to ensure that, because I know I've heard from some of my constituents, the veterans, saying about the mental health issue. What is it, or how can we get back to pre-pandemic levels and ensure that this doesn't happen again?
I would say the pandemic has offered some opportunities and some challenges. The challenges, I think, would be fairly evident. Most of us have experienced that. How to get people working remotely. How do you hire 350 people, but they cannot come into an office? How do you train 350 people? But we got past that, and they're working much more effectively now. The opportunities are that our population and groups from where we can hire, particularly if we're looking at the Francophone population, because we were no longer stuck with bricks and mortar, our ability to hire in more remote regions became an opportunity for us. And so I would say that the pandemic has offered some challenges that we were able to overcome and some opportunities that will carry forward with us into the future. We have much more effective training that can be delivered virtually at a self-paced, I think my time is running out, but so again, I would close by saying I think it's been more of an opportunity, and we're really starting to see the effects of that now.
Thank you. So
excuse me, Ms. Roberts, it's over. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
And now I invite the Honorable MP Sean Casey for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Roberts was asking such excellent questions, and you were given such a thorough answer that I'm going to get you to continue in that vein. I too am quite interested in the impact of COVID-19 on your efforts within Veterans Affairs. Oh, and I jumped right in. Mr. Harris, Ms. Mounier, it's good to see you both again. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Ms. Mounier. I see Mr. Harris a little more frequently, but welcome to the committee, and it really is a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to interact with you in this way from my basement just a few blocks away from where you are. So COVID-19, I can just imagine the difficulty of hiring and onboarding and making productive a new employee who is faced with a mountain of paper, either real or electronic, and a major challenge. And I know you touched upon it, but please take a minute to elaborate a little more, and then I've got a couple of other areas I want to talk to you about.
Sure, thank you. Traditionally, we would have, when hiring new employees, the onboarding or training was face-to-face, elbow to elbow. And when the pandemic occurred, of course, that was just not possible. Within a very short period of time, we partnered with a local college to help us develop virtual modules intended for adult learning. We were able to produce 80 learning modules that allowed us to onboard those teams and get them training faster than we ever had before. There were some kinks, of course, and we've learned through that process and adjusted and developed from that point forward. At the beginning, we noticed some difficulty in that when you're training new folks and doing quality assurance, you're pulling from your experienced decision makers to help sort of buddy up with a new person. But through that, again, we continue to evolve the way we work and evolve our training. And at the end, we've actually built a very solid model where staff can feel comfortable in a virtual environment, reaching out to solicit advice, solicit support. So we're quite proud of what we've been able to do. And I guess I would say we are much more disciplined and much more consistent in our work. And if you're asking me, I think those are two things that absolutely have to stay in order to see consistency in our service standard going forward.
Thank you. I was first named to this committee back after the 2011 election. And you will undoubtedly recall in the years 2011 to 2015, there were pretty deep cuts to the civil service generally and to Veterans Affairs particularly, including the closing of district offices. What impact did that have? Sorry, and let me just go one step further. And now I hear you talking about the complexities involved in cases. Back then, the argument was our veterans are dying off. There are no longer traditional veterans, and therefore there is less need for such manpower within Veterans Affairs. I hear you telling a vastly different story today. I'd be interested in your comments on the impact of those cuts, what was required to rebuild, and more specifically the district offices.
I think maybe I can offer Amy a break to take a sip of water and answer that on her behalf. There were certainly some changes with respect to the HR complement at Veterans Affairs over that period. There was, as you noted, an expectation that we would have a reduction in clients as we were moving forward. As Amy's noted a little bit earlier in the message here, we've seen a significant increase in the number of people coming forward. That's by virtue of additional new programs, a broader suite of programs that are available that help people transition more successfully. There are still challenges, but they help people transition more successfully. We've been able to reopen offices and make sure that there are offices in local communities to be able to help veterans in their communities by making sure that those offices are opened and staffed appropriately. And the staff that we have now that have been added over the course of the last little while have helped us significantly. Amy spoke about the challenge of hiring in the pandemic. And part of the optimism that we have here in responding to some of the questions from earlier is we actually have all of these people on board and trained. We needed to recruit them first and then train them during the pandemic at the outset 2 years ago. Now we have them on board, trained and ready to go. They're already running at the starting line of the additional 2 years that have been provided here. And that gives us a lot of optimism for the team and for our ability to continue to bring down the numbers in those in backlog situations.
It's great stuff. Thanks to you both.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Et là, nous allons donc.
Now we will go to 2 short questions, 2.5 minutes each. And I would like to invite Luc Desilets to ask his question for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Meunier, could you tell me yes or no if the positions that were created, the temporary positions, are full-time positions? Are they all full-time positions?
Full-time positions.
OK. Parfait.
Great. The problem of backlogs has happened over 50 years. There's been a big investment, and that's wonderful. Why is that increase only for 2 years? Why don't we see it over the long term? Because you've also mentioned earlier that there was an increase in the number of applications. There's an increase, certainly, which we've seen over maybe 10 years. we're always listening, and we'd like to ensure we have the necessary resources to prevent backlogs, and we're working on that. Why is it temporary? We still have work to do to modernize systems, to change the rules, to ensure that we can be as productive as possible with the number of employees we have, to ensure we have the right number of people for each issue, to process requests from veterans. To ask the question in another way, do you think in 2 years, with that investment, will backlogs be at the same level? Do you think we'll be able to continue on without those employees? What we expect in 2 years is to have under control what we have in terms of applications and backlogs. To do, as Ms. Meunier explained earlier, to respond within 16 weeks, that service standard for 80%. And we think we'll be able to do that within 2 years. So that's why you would say it's not necessary to have permanent positions. We're not yet sure of the number of positions that are necessary given the demand, given the improvements we will be making to the system and the processes. So that is why with the investment, these temporary employees, we are better positioned to ensure the future. Okay, thank you. That's all for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. Now we will go to Ms. Rachel Blaney. You have the opportunity to continue with the questions you were asking earlier. Go ahead. 2.5 minutes.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I would like to come back. I'm just wondering if you are receiving any feedback from veterans about the MyVac account, because like I said earlier, we're hearing a lot, and caregivers specifically have been very frustrated because they can't do with or for their partner or loved one what is desperately needed to be done, and trying to mentor, support, or get them to do it can be frustrating. So I'm just wondering, has there been any review of the MyVac account and adding accessibility to people that the veteran themselves could appoint as their main caregivers?
So thanks very much for the question. We do receive feedback on my VAC account and the accessibility issue. People are able to have proxies access it for them if they want to have other people access on their behalf by providing that level of power of attorney. Essentially, I'll put it in that kind of terms for somebody to be able to access it.
Just to let you know, Mr. Harris, we've actually seen times where they have done that proxy and that is still not acknowledged. And so when they're trying to inquire and do things on behalf of, they are absolutely being blocked. So is there a process of complaint or intervention that our veterans caregivers could have or be provided with to address that when that occurs?
Yeah, if anyone's having any difficulty in that instance, certainly if they've come through to the member, you can certainly contact the Veterans Affairs Office to make sure that we can address that issue. Individual veterans and or family members can certainly contact us through our National Contact Center to indicate if they're having any issues as well, and happy to follow up on any cases you have.
That helps. Thank you. So I just wanted to hit on my last question is around the hiring of more remote communities. So I think that's very interesting. And I also know that during this time of remote work, during the pandemic, serving French-speaking veterans could be interesting because it doesn't really matter where people are located. So I guess it's a two-part. One is, how are we going to make sure that people are hired remote who are far away from the bricks and mortar are continuing on in their work? And how do we make sure that French-speaking staff are located in the same area where French-speaking veterans are in the future?
I think there's a couple of things. There's a bigger, broader public service question about location of work with respect to what people are doing. And so people working remotely have existed previously, although there's a lot more people working remotely, not only within Veterans Affairs Canada, but in multiple areas. And I do think that there's an avenue forward for us to keep people who are working away from what their assigned office might be into the future. And so that's one of the conversations certainly we're having here. The second question, just quickly about people in their communities. It's always great to have people in their communities. There's lots of people who work on veteran files who don't have to be in the community that they necessarily live in if their skills provide that opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And we have two other interventions from our colleagues. So I'd like to invite Honorable MP Wagenthal to ask questions during 5 minutes, please.
I appreciate that, Chair. However, I believe it's Mr. Caputo who should be asking the questions now, as I took his place earlier.
Right. So I invite Mr. Caputo, so the first Vice President of the committee, to speak for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you as well to Mr. Harris and Ms. Mounier for making themselves available. Now, Ms. Mounier, in your opening statement, you talked about how many applications for disability have come in the last 5 to 6 years. But we know that new applications dropped significantly during the COVID pandemic. Can you tell us how many applications came in since last January, please?
I certainly can. It may just take me a second to get that exact number. I just wanted to clarify one quick point. The intake of first apps did drop when the pandemic first hit, but then it began to steadily increase from September 2020 to now. So I just wanted to make that clear. There was a short-term dip, but it has continued to increase since then.
And did that short-term increase result in pre-pandemic levels of applications?
I'm not sure I'm 100% following.
What I'm saying is that pre-pandemic we had levels. There was a decrease due to the pandemic, and in your last answer, you just said that the numbers did increase steadily, I believe, from September 2020. Did that increase result in applications that were consistent with pre-pandemic levels?
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Yes, and for some months, again, intake isn't always a straight line. It does ebb and flow. We did see an alignment with waves, meaning that as our communities opened up, so did people's opportunity or access to medical professionals. We did see some spikes. For example, in November of 2021, intake went up to 7,700, whereas a normal month or an average month would be more along the lines of 5,900.
Thank you. You also noted that there was a decrease of 44% in the backlog from 23,000 to just under 13,000 so far. Was this impacted by COVID numbers resulting, at least initially, in a reduction of applications?
Yes, certainly within April, May, and June of 2020. But as I mentioned earlier, that was quickly gained back in those months where application volume increased. So there would have been a short-term difference, but it then started to increase from there on and went right back to standard levels. At the same time, in April 2020 and May of 2020, we as an organization were figuring out how to have 1,000+ people working from home virtually. So there was a bit of a double-edged sword in that dynamic.
Did you notice a difference in productivity when people were working from home?
I certainly noticed a difference in productivity in those first few months as people began to adapt to working online. When the pandemic hit, only about 10% of my organization were equipped to work from home because they were already in a telework type of arrangement. So it did take some time for the team members to adapt to that, how to work virtually within their team environment. So I would say I did notice some impact, but the productivity quickly rebounded once people became familiar with using virtual tools and how to work in a virtual team environment.
Thank you. So is it fair to say then that productivity now with people working from home is the same as pre-pandemic?
I think that was fair, if not maybe even more efficient.
Okay, well that's good to hear. Now, this committee did a study on the veterans backlog, obviously. Are you able to say how many adjudicators have been hired since that study was completed?
I assume you just mean decision makers. We have different names there. One is specifically entitled disability adjudicator. We have hired close to 518 individuals around since the time of that report. Of that, about 70% are decision makers.
Okay. And would the rest would you call them caseworkers then?
No, I would call them intake officers. So the individual who isn't making a decision but receives the application, service verification officers, and those types of positions.
So roughly about 350. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Caputo. And now I'd like to invite the honorable member Wilson Miao for the last round of questions for 5 minutes, please. Open your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witness attending today's study. I'd like to ask this question. Can you please tell us what role and its mandate of the Office of Women and LGBTQ2 Veterans have, and why this office is set up?
Thanks very much for the question. And you know, the role of the office is to accomplish a couple of things. Be a key focal point for our stakeholder community to be able to reach out and better understand the needs of our women veterans, of our LGBTQ veterans. As Ms. Meunier noted before, we don't collect information on LGBTQ veterans specifically. It's not part of something that's included on an information or an application form or things of that nature. And so one of the avenues that the office uses is to make sure that they're in contact with stakeholder groups and communities that support veterans, LGBTQ2 veterans. And so, for example, I know you'll have Mr. Ross on in the second hour. He and his group of the Rainbow Veterans is a group that we consult with regularly from a stakeholder point of view to understand whether or not there are any challenges that the LGBTQ community may be facing with Veterans Affairs and any adjustments that we might be able to make on that front. So that's one element of it. Internally, it also helps us too in terms of working with various areas, including areas like Ms. Meunier's for applications on disability benefits. But we also have a lot of other programs that work on education and training, programs that work on career transitions. What we want to make sure is that for our women veterans and for our LGBTQ veterans, that they're serving them well as well. And so they work with those various areas to make sure that the programs that are in place are supportive and able to be flexible enough to vary to the needs of veterans who may have different requirements, frankly, from our programming. So it plays an external function in terms of interfacing with various communities, but it also plays a function within the department of making sure that the programs and policies and the operations help to take into consideration any needs that may be different from different communities of veterans.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Mr. Harris. Are there any issues or barrier being identified through this office, and what is being done to address those?
I think that there's a couple of issues, and sometimes those issues are individual. They might come from the attention of an individual veteran and an issue they may be facing, and then collectively there may be issues that are brought forward, and so some of them are actually issues that we've discussed at this committee before with respect to delays with women veterans applications that may be because of rules or programs or descriptions that are in place that are a bit old, out of date, or that don't reflect the needs of our women veterans, for example. And so in Ms. Meunier's area, we're making adjustments to ensure that any policy, program, guidance document is good to reflect the needs of the broad variety of the veteran community that might come forward in that area. And that's true across our other areas. We have a Veterans Independence program that helps support veterans be at home, and so there may be needs that are different in the context of somebody who is a women veteran versus a male veteran. We need to make sure that those are taken into consideration. That's true for the broad variety of programming that exists on that front. So we're making changes on those as we learn about any barriers or difficulties that are faced.
That's very good to hear. So does this information from this flow through to the adjudicators of veterans claim so that they're better equipped to deal with claims from women and LGBTQ2 veterans?
It does. Sorry, it certainly does, and so it's coming from two ways: from that strategic level, but also from what we're hearing directly from veterans. One small example. I just, to give you an example, on our application form, you're asked to provide your name. Well, we had an application from a male, and while we were seeking out their service health records, it kept coming back as though the individual hadn't served. And the reality is they did, but after service, they had transitioned to male. And so we want to change our application form to be much more inclusive. So individuals have an opportunity to express themselves, but also have an accurate record of their time in service. And so that would be applicable for women with married names who in the service, but later divorce. The name alone can create a lot of challenges and obstacles within the process. And so we're rooting out. I just offer that as one tactical example of improving the process.
Well, thank you, Ms. Munier. And is there any future plan for this office or its mandate? I know my time is out, but I'll maybe save that for later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miao. Écoutez, mesdames.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this panel. I'd also like to thank the members and the witnesses for having respected their speaking time. And on behalf of committee members, I'd like to thank the witnesses for their contribution to this study and for their service to veterans. So we've heard from the Department of Veterans Affairs, Stephen Harris, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery Branch, and Amy Meunier, Director General, Centralized Operations Division. So we will suspend for 2 minutes to welcome our next panel of witnesses. Stay connected. There isn't another link. So the meeting is suspended. We will resume our meeting.
Comments for the benefit of the new witnesses. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on your microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Les services
Interpretation services offered for this video conference are about the same as those offered during regular committee meetings. At the bottom of your screen, you can choose between the floor, English, and French. I would invite you to speak slowly and clearly. When you don't have the floor, please mute your microphone. I would now like to welcome our witnesses. In the notice of meeting, we had Sherry Bordage. Unfortunately, she isn't able to join us, but it is my pleasure to welcome Rainbow Veterans of Canada, Todd Ross, who is the co-chair, as well as from the Veterans Transition Network, Oliver Thorne, Executive Director. I know that you will have 5 minutes for your opening statement, so we will begin with Todd Ross and then go to Mr. Thorne for his 5 minutes. So please turn on your microphone and proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Nin Wabanakwat Nadishnikaz Migizin Indodum Duck Lake Onjaba Nokomis. I introduce myself as Wabanakwat. My spirit name, I am Eagle Clan. My grandmother is from Duck Lake, and I'm Métis and a citizen of the Métis Nation of Ontario. I'm joining you today from the unceded and unsurrendered lands of the Wistagweg in what is known as Manakwesk, now called the City of St. John. My name is Todd Ross, and I'm co-chair of Rainbow Veterans of Canada. I'm pleased to be here today to speak to you about service delivery for 2S LGBTQ+ veterans, and I applaud the committee's effort to undertake this study. I would note that I hope in the future the committee includes services to First Nation, Inuit, and Métis veterans as part of this work. I'm a veteran and one of the lead plaintiffs of the class action lawsuit known as the LGBT Purge. Rainbow Veterans of Canada was created shortly after the class action to fill a gap, to be an advocacy and education organization to 2S LGBTQ+ veterans. We serve those who are part of the Purge and all 2S LGBTQ+ veterans. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the removal of the ban on LGBT people serving openly in the military. However, many of us just recently started our relationship with Veteran Affairs. When I received my honorable discharge in 1990, I was told that I would never qualify for services from Veteran Affairs, and I was told I was not a veteran. This was common for many Purge survivors. Purge survivors tend to be older with high rates of mental health challenges. Combined with years of experiencing homophobia and transphobia in society, many of us avoided Veteran Affairs because we did not feel that we could trust back, and there was a fear of not being safe. But we have seen dramatic change in recent years. Veteran Affairs created a dedicated 1-800 number and dedicated staff for LGBT veterans around the same time as the apology in the House of Commons. We have witnessed great work from back since the apology. We've noted the leadership of the minister to work with 2S LGBTQ+ veterans, and we greatly appreciate the work of the new Directorate for Women and LGBTQ+ veterans. These efforts are removing many of the roadblocks to service that had previously existed. There are 4 areas that I would like to point out today that I believe need change to assist 2S LGBTQ+ veterans. Staff at VAC need ongoing training to be aware of the history of the LGBT Purge and the challenges facing all 2S LGBTQ+ veterans. Rainbow Veterans is pleased to continue to assist with this training. Second, dealing with staff at VAC can be intimidating to veterans. The high turnover of case managers is particularly harmful. For example, one veteran has recently had 4 case managers in the past year. That means 4 times they've had to recount their personal story and be re-traumatized each time. 2S LGBTQ+ veterans receive a blue zone classification. This is a priority designation I would suggest that district directors be aware of case managers who are most familiar with the LGBT purge and match these case managers to the blue zone clients in their district. Many purge survivors are older and are approaching Veteran Affairs for the first time in their lives. Those over 65 are told that they've aged out and don't qualify for benefits. Veteran Affairs needs to take responsibility for assisting these veterans even after age 65. There have been some exemptions, but there have also been veterans turned away. These veterans should receive the benefits for rehabilitation and an income benefit after 65. Finally, we need to feel welcome. After being shut out for so long, we need to see ourselves reflected in communications, and we need to see more services be inclusive, both within VAC as well as organizations that are funded by VAC to deliver services. We need to see more 2S LGBTQ+ veterans and partnerships profiled, and a safe space designation at physical locations and on the VAC website would be suggested. I thank you for allowing me to present to the committee today, and I thank you for undertaking this review.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ross, for your introduction. And now I would like to invite Mr. Tom for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Oliver Thorne. I'm the Executive Director with the Veterans Transition Network, which is a registered Canadian charity headquartered in Vancouver, but operating across Canada that provides transition and counseling programs for Canadian Forces veterans. Before I continue, pour les membres francophones de la comité.
For Francophone committee members, I apologize that today my statement will only be in English. Unfortunately, my French isn't strong enough to give specific testimony in French, but bilingual services is a very important goal for our organization. So if you wish to discuss our programs in more detail in French, I would be pleased to put you in touch with our program coordinator in Quebec.
So as I mentioned, the VTN is a registered Canadian charity. The program that we deliver has a 20-year history. It was initially developed at the University of British Columbia in the late 90s. In 2013, our organization was incorporated with the mission of expanding that program across Canada. So for the past 9 years, our goal has been increasing accessibility of this program with 3 key focuses: geography, gender, and language. So first, making the program accessible in as many places as possible around Canada. Second, ensuring that our program is uniquely tailored and adapted to the experiences and the needs of women in the Canadian Forces. And finally, ensuring that we're able to provide the same level of service in English and in French. So in 2012, when we first started, we were delivering programs in British Columbia only, for men only, and in English. This year, we're delivering in 8 provinces across Canada, from coast to coast, programs for men and women in English and French. 25 to 40% of our programs on an annual basis are women's programs, and about 15 to 20% of our programs are French programs. We've also been a registered service provider to Veterans Affairs Canada for 8 years. This means that they will cover the cost of attendance of veterans who attend our program with an eligible claim for Veterans Affairs. That makes up about 15% of the veterans that we serve. The remaining 85%, we raise the funds to put them through the program at no cost to them. So my testimony today, while I cannot speak specifically about VAC services, as although we are a VAC service provider, we focus on our own service delivery, I can certainly speak about the lessons that we've learned through expanding these programs over the past 8 years and how it relates to differences in service delivery. So I have 4 major points. So in our experience, first and foremost, point 1, cultural competence is a key requirement to working successfully with veterans in a mental health context. This is true for all Canadian veterans, but it's particularly true for groups who are a minority or marginalized within the veterans population, because their identity affects the experience of their military service, their needs, and their needs in transition after service. And I can provide follow-up examples in the question period. Second point, there is a very important distinction between injuries sustained in service to the Canadian Forces and injuries caused by service. to the Canadian Forces. And again, this is particularly true for minority or marginalized groups in the military, such as women and LGBTQ plus veterans. Their traumatic injuries are often caused by the institution, not by their military service itself. This affects the services they need, how they engage with services, as Todd talked about, the trust that they have for institutions, how they may request services. And this highlights the need for non-governmental service providers, such as our organization and Todd's organization. Third, because of these previous 2 points, service offerings must therefore be uniquely developed and tailored to the needs of these individuals in order to be helpful and to be competent in helping them. And finally, point 4, because of the historical stigma around mental health within the military, veterans of the Canadian Armed Forces are often resistant to help seeking and only reach out at the point where they are approaching or in crisis. The result then is that we need services that are professional, tailored to their needs, that are quickly accessible when they reach out. Because if they are not met with a hand that reaches back providing service, we risk that they will disengage from the process of help seeking entirely and be lost. Subject to your questions, that's all that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thorne, and merci pour votre discussion.
Thank you for your testimony and for your comments as well. You know we have interpretation that's available. Thank you. I'd now like to go to questions. I'd like to inform members that we will have 2 rounds, a 6-minute round for each member, and then 2.5 minutes and 5 minutes for this meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the first Vice Chair, Mr. Frank Caputo, to ask his questions for 6 minutes and tell us, please, who you are directing your question to, Mr. Ross or Mr. Thorne. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ross, we have not had the pleasure of meeting in person, but I do hope that in the future we can meet face-to-face, because what you described in your opening statement really needs to be shared, and I'd like to hear it in person. Mr. Thorne, it's wonderful to see you again. I recall that you're not a veteran, but you are doing wonderful work, so thank you for that. And Mr. Ross, I think it goes without saying, thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you have done. Mr. Ross, I'm wondering if you could please tell the committee how the experience of 2 LGBTQ plus clients changes perhaps during and after service.
Sorry, to clarify, how their experience changes with VAC before and after service?
I'm sorry, in terms of, the barriers that a person is experiencing, sorry, I didn't word that question well. What sort of barriers might a person experience during service, and then what sorts of barriers is a person experiencing after service?
Absolutely. And remind you, I was discharged in 1990, so it's been a little while since I've been in service, in military service. There still exists within the Canadian Armed Forces challenges for 2S LGBTQ plus people. For an example, we have been looking at the chaplain service, where we know that there's still homophobia that exists within the chaplain service. It is problematic, particularly when a person may be coming out as a serving member, and they go to their chaplain and are told that, they should deny who they are. And I've had a chance to speak with the chaplain general about this, and they are looking to change, and they've directed the chaplains that homophobia is not acceptable. However, it still exists within some of those organizations. The experience on ships now, speaking specifically from the naval tradition, can be very welcoming. I know serving members who are open and proud and are having great experiences. I don't know throughout. I I know anecdotally there are still challenges within the armed forces of individuals who are experiencing homophobia and transphobia. But once released, historically, the challenge has been, we refer to it as two closets, that when you're serving, you would be in the closet and not be open about being gay. Once you were released and in the gay community, you would not be open about having been in the military. Because it's in many areas within the gay community, it's frowned upon to have served in the military or any police. So there are challenges when we're in uniform. There are challenges when we get out of uniform. Once we're out, there have not been very many welcoming spaces as veterans. I'm still reluctant to go into a Legion today because I don't know if that's a safe space. I don't know how I'm going to be reacted to by Legion members. And this is an experience that we have seen working with various legions across the country, where some are very good, but isolated legions still have issues with membership being homophobic or transphobic, and it re-traumatizes the LGBT veterans when they're working with these legions. So I don't know if I've completely answered your question, but there are challenges both within and without. And as LGBT people, we just kind of have to work our way through and hope that we're able to minimize them for future generations.
Well, thank you, and I can say I'd be very proud to accompany you to anywhere, including a Legion. So thank you for all that you've said and that you do. Now, given your direct contact with 2S LGBTQ plus veterans, are you able to comment about what they generally tell you about service delivery from Veterans Affairs Canada?
Yeah, again, recently the experience has been very good. We have had challenges with some individuals. The individual I mentioned who's dealing with case managers, and we've had challenges with others who are 65 plus who have been denied services. Some we've been able to address that. So periodically we run into challenges with individual veterans. Overall, we're seeing much better service than we were 4 years ago. So there has been a much more improved response from Veteran Affairs, but we're still dealing with issues. And we have volunteers who go out and help these veterans to interact directly with Veteran Affairs to try and sort through the challenges. And we elevate it to leadership at Veteran Affairs when we need to.
Now, if I'm understanding you correctly, the issue with the case manager is generally one of rapport, and that rapport is really destroyed when there's a turnover, correct? Because you have to just start over again, is that right?
Mr. Caputo, I'm sorry, the time is over, so I have to go to the next MP. So I invite MP Darrell Sanson for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much for both your presentations. You can hear me well? Good. I much appreciate the Mr. Ross. I'd like to start off, of course, by saying thank you for your service. And I too was in the House. I don't know if you were at that time, but when the apology, the House of Commons, just seeing the people there, and it made me proud to be a Canadian. Very touching, and just when you mentioned it, it touched me, closely again, because it was a very important turning point, something that had to be done. And I was so proud that our government and all parliamentarians were able to support that, and very happy. I guess I'm also thinking about you also being an Indigenous and LGBTQ. It's almost like a double-barreled challenge in marginalized individual, and that too makes it even more complicated. So I thank you for sharing some of the feedback that you're able to share. I guess I would have a couple of quick questions for you. You made reference to some over 65 not receiving or not qualifying for benefits. Can you just expand that quickly?
Yes, of course, and thank you. I was in the House that day, and it was a very emotional day. It's still. For my understanding is that VAC ages out veterans at the age of 65. That once you're 65, the policy is that you can receive benefits through other government services. So VAC services are no longer required. There have been exceptions made. And that deals with rehabilitation and it deals with income support. For example, for most people who were purge survivors, when evaluated, we look at getting mental health supports through VAC, as well as there's an additional income top up for once you qualify through purge survivors. My understanding is if you're 65 and over, the income support is not considered essential because you have income support from the government.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Thorne, just a very quick question. You made reference to injury in service versus injury caused by service. Would you like to expand on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually a concept that was discussed in one of the Center of Excellence Royal Groups, and I'd love to take credit for it, but it's not my term or phrase. Another colleague came up with it, and the difference of an injury caused by service or caused by the institution is, for example, if we look at military sexual trauma, which in our women's programs is typically the central topic that is discussed when people are talking about their barrier to transition and their traumatic injuries. Often those injuries, those traumas have been perpetrated by individuals who are within the organization, and often in a position of higher rank, in a position of oversight, and the way that traumatic injury manifests results in different effects for the individual. And again, I'm talking very much from the perspective of mental health injuries, trauma, difficulties of transition. That's our focus. But the injury that causes can truly fracture somebody's sense of trust, ability to trust in institutions like the Canadian Forces, like the government. And that then directly results in how the traumatic injury manifests itself, the types of symptoms that they display, and also how we might help somebody through that. But also, as I mentioned, how they seek help. And Mr. Ross talked about this earlier, that individuals might be very leery or reticent about reaching out to an organization like Veterans Affairs or reaching out to the government, to their chain of command, to D&D to ask for assistance, because that is the institution that caused their injury.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you. I don't want to take too much time. They came back to me quickly, so I'll give up the rest of my time, and so we have more time for others. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanson. And now let's go to Mr. Luc Desilets for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the report from the Ombudsman, the incendiary report from the Ombudsman, was published, we could understand the gap between Anglophones and Francophones because of the difficulty in recruitment, but the gap between men and women was less obvious. I find your testimony very moving and troubling. And in that report, there wasn't reference to 2SL, LGBTQ, or First Nations, which takes away from the whole. Do you have the impression, the question might be a little different, but do you not have the impression that 2S LGBTQ plus have been hurt even more than female veterans by Veterans Affairs.
Ross?
Sorry, to me?
Oui, je m'excuse.
Yes, I apologize. Perhaps I didn't say.
Thank you. I don't know the experience of women in the armed forces, so I don't think that I can say whether or not one has been more or less harmed. I do know that there is a high number of LGBT purge survivors who went through the class action lawsuit, a very high number who are women. That points to a couple things. One is that the women experience has been more recent, I think early on in the LGBT purge, it was men who were targeted. As women came into the forces, women were, from what I see, women were probably targeted more than men through the LGBT purge. Beyond that, I know that there exists challenges for LGBT people, there exist challenges for women in the forces, and there exist challenges for First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people within the forces.
On n'a pas possibilité de chiffrer.
We don't have numbers for all of that, Mr. Ross.
No, sir.
Parfait.
Okay. The purge of LGBT members by national defense for 40 or 50 years, 40 years, is a somber part of the history of our country. There was $145 million after a class action lawsuit to try to compensate victims. Are you satisfied with that? Is that amount sufficient? Is it appropriate? Do you have a comment?
Toujours, Monsieur Ross.
Mr. Ross.
Yes. So I think that it's difficult to put a price amount on the harm that was done to individuals. I think that the amount ended up being some comfort to those who had their lives destroyed, but certainly cannot erase the years of trauma, the years of anguish that resulted from the LGBT purge. It also does not recognize those who have passed away. We were able to create the LGBT Purge Fund with, I believe, $24 million there around, going towards the memorialization and reconciliation efforts. So I believe that it was a significant amount. I believe it was a somewhat respectable amount for people to receive. But again, people's lives were destroyed, and it's very difficult to put a price on that. That said, we have been able to see some great work as a result of the $145 million that was awarded through the class action.
Thank you. With the culture of masculinity, toxic masculinity at National Defense, do you have the impression that there is still discrimination against LGBTQ plus staff? Mr. Ross again.
Yes. I gave the example of the chaplains. I know that there are people just being released now who are experiencing post-traumatic stress because of dealing with chaplains within the military. That is an ongoing issue. There are other examples. It is very difficult in that environment, within the military environment, to be an openly gay, lesbian, trans, bi person and to be accepted by everyone.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Mr. Ross. Very much appreciated.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Desilets.
I'd like to invite MP Rachel Blaney for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I want to thank both Mr. Ross and Mr. Thorne for their testimony. And of course, thank you, Mr. Ross, for your service to our country. And, you know, deep sadness that we still struggle in this planet to just look at basic human rights and live that way, and then really recognize human beings as human beings. I guess my first question is going to you, Mr. Ross. I found your 4 points very interesting. So the first one I would like to touch on is the idea of ongoing training. Specifically, you said on the purge and making that clear, so that I'm assuming people, as they're addressing those files, regardless of their role, will be able to assess that more appropriately. And I also can imagine for case managers would be highly helpful, and working with the community. So I'm just wondering, you said ongoing, do you sort of have a frame of reference in your mind for how frequently, and would there be a part of that that would include sort of the beginning training when somebody's hired into these positions?
Thank you. Yes, we have been working with Veteran Affairs Canada to do some training. We did a virtual training exercise just recently, and I believe it was earlier this year, with several hundred staff, a few hundred staff from across the country. I think as people come on board to Veteran Affairs Canada, there should be minimum training. There should never be a case where a purge survivor goes to present, whether it be in a VAC office or whether it be to a case manager, where they have to explain to the case manager what the purge was. There should be a basic level of understanding, particularly all case managers, and I would say all anyone within a leadership authority within Veteran Affairs should have an understanding. And there also should be an understanding of the issues that affect individuals who were part of the purge. That should be ongoing. I think with the number of case managers that we've seen with turnover, it's been difficult, which is why I made the other suggestion of having dedicated case managers who were subject matter experts, who work directly with LGBT veterans.
Well, I really appreciated the idea of matching, and I think that's really important. And I think for all veterans, it is definitely a challenge when you're having to re-explain your trauma and the impacts that has on you. And so to add this other level onto it, I think is just unacceptable. So I really appreciate that. The next question I have was, you talked about creating safe spaces, and you also talked about the website, I believe. And I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations to us on how to make a tool like the website be more safe for the community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Very easily, have an identifier on the website that says this is a safe space for 2S LGBTQ plus veterans. It would be very easy to have a little button, but also there needs to be inclusion throughout the website. We have seen an increase. My profile's on there now. So we've seen an increase on the VAC website. It needs to be more normalized, that it isn't kind of for Pride Month we're going to put up a profile, but very easily identify with a safe space sticker on the website.
Well, I appreciate that, and it makes me think of a research project review that I went to that talked about how many people from the LGBTQ2 plus community are going back in the closet as they age when they go into seniors facilities. And I think that all of this contributes to broadening that dialogue and making sure that spaces are safer. So the last question, I want to come to both of you on this one, just for your opinion and feedback. What we've heard, and I think this is really important, because we heard about the trauma and the difference between trauma from your service and trauma due to your service. And I work with a lot of veterans who really struggle with accessing their MyVac account. They struggle because they have challenges. They could have post-traumatic stress disorder. They could be too much in disarray to even be able to sit down and do that work. And we have huge challenges with them being able to have a caregiver or somebody who is their main person be able to access the information, put the information in, and help get the services they need. I don't always know that people understand that if there's a high rate of trauma, bringing them to a place where they can actually even have a conversation can be a challenge. So I'm just wondering if you could talk from both of your perspectives about how we can make accessing services more accessible for people who desperately need it and the caregivers who love them.
Absolutely. I think that's the $1 million question, is how do we make these services more accessible? And I think in first place, reducing the amount of, in any way that we can, the paperwork barrier between an individual putting their hand up and then sitting down with a counselor, for instance. Veterans Affairs has recently announced that they will automatically approve certain services at the time of application. From our perspective, that's a fantastic announcement and progress to see. For individuals that have trouble processing their application, against talking through their experience, getting that down on paper, we've often worked with the service officers with the Royal Canadian Legion. So that's somebody who has received VAC training, who's able to act on behalf of an individual who is applying to Veterans Affairs. Something like that is incredibly helpful. But again, that depends on access and comfort with that organization, as Mr. Ross identified.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom and Ms. Blaney. So now let's start with the last round of questions. We have about 4 MPs who are going to intervene. And I will take the opportunity to welcome MP Alex Roth, and I turn the floor to him for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's great to be back at Veterans Affairs. I started my political career here on this committee, and for the, I know for Mr. Ross, he may not be aware, but 25 years in uniform, so I'm well versed. I was going to ask you a direct question, Mr. Ross, but MP Blaney actually kind of beat me to the punch. But I just want to thank you for your advocacy for the 2S LGBTQ community. And thank you for your service. Things have got better, but as you say, it's not there yet. One of my best friends is still serving in the military, a senior officer who's openly gay. And one of my best soldiers that I had in my battalion was not only Indigenous, but he was gay as well. And you're always welcome at the Tara Branch 383 in my hometown of Tara to the Legion there. We'll welcome you, anybody who ever served and anybody just in general. Mr. Thorne, I just want to thank you again for your advocacy, not only for veterans, but everything you've been doing on the Afghan file as well. However, those 4 recommendations that you've provided here, I just think are so vital, and they're 4 of the best recommendations I've heard. The cultural competence, the need for having veterans, I think, in VAC and understanding not only whether they're marginal communities, but just the understanding the situation, that split between injuries caused by CAF or caused by the institution, the need to have uniquely tailored. But what my question wants to focus on, because this is what I'm still concerned about, even with the testimony we just got with the previous panel, about the importance of having quick access. I'm still getting, despite the improvements that are being made in VAC, veterans that are saying it's taken 20 to 30 months to get resolution on their files. Can you just expand on the importance and the trauma, especially those dealing with PTSD and mental health challenges too, of veterans not getting that help that they need quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anecdotally, I can say that we get a lot of our emails with people expressing their interest in the program at 2:00 in the morning. Right, that is when individuals often are reaching out, and we've talked about military culture. We've talked about that element of hypermasculinity. The military is a Darwinian. It has Darwinian nature. It has a culture that's built around strength and rooting out weakness, and that's understandable given its aims. But the result then is a real resistance to help seeking because of the fear of being perceived as weak. So the result is that individuals are often reaching out to services like ours to request help when they are very close or at a point of crisis. So those emails that we get at 2:00 in the morning say, I've just lost my second job in 6 months. my wife is thinking about leaving me. I think now I need to seek some help. That's the point at which they're asking. And so it's so crucial that there are a minimum number of barriers between that email and somebody sitting down in some type of service, is because they are already at that crisis point. And if instead of a message back that says, yep, let's talk, we can help you, instead if they get a stack of paperwork, they're going to disengage from that process of help seeking. So it's vitally important. I understand that Veterans Affairs obviously has their processes that they need to go through in order to process people to set up services. This is where I feel that external service providers like ours, like Mr. Ross's, this is where we are able to help. 50% of the people who seek our services do not have a claim with Veterans Affairs at all. That means that we are engaging with a segment of the veteran population that, for whatever reason, is resistant to engaging with Veterans Affairs. And so that is the role that we can play as external service providers. And in doing that, when we bring veterans into our program, which we try to make highly accessible, quickly available, when they go through that process, and often working through our program is sometimes the first type of support they've ever received, as we're working through some of those initial challenges, we're then encouraging them to seek other services, to seek out Veterans Affairs, even though it may be an onerous process. So that's where I feel we can provide some assistance.
No, thanks so much for that, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Ross, just a quick question to give you a chance to further expand on the importance of having less turnover in VAC with the case managers, and then having, as MP Polanyi asked, about people that can actually identify with the veterans that are reaching out.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the traumatic experience of LGBT purge survivors specifically, and then going to VAC, having to go and get paperwork filled out, going through the process, often doing this alone. It's can be very daunting. And as Oliver pointed out, people do just disengage, they walk away. So having those people who understand at the beginning are able to work with you is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, and thank you, Mr. Roth, also for your intervention. And I invite Mr. Torrance Rogers for 5 minutes, and I know that you're going to split your time with MP Valdez. Please open your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and indeed I am sharing with Ms. Valdez. I want to welcome our guest that's been with us today, and find the testimony fascinating and some of the examples you're providing. Mr. Thorne, you mentioned geography, gender, language, and differences in service delivery impacted by culture, institutional impact, services tailored to individuals, and professional services. These are some of the items and terms you referenced. So I'm just wondering, can you tell us about the work of your organization, just like you just gave an example, and how you help veterans, and more importantly, the relationship that you have with Veterans Affairs Canada, you and your organization? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. For the past 20 years, up until the start of COVID, we delivered something called the Veterans Transition Program. So this is a 10-day group-based counseling program. It's delivered in a retreat format, and it's built around the concept of soldiers helping soldiers. So something that the founders of our program discovered very early on is that the needs and experiences of veterans and soldiers were often not well served by the existing psychological services that were out there in the community. They were largely undertaken and run by civilian counselors, psychologists who did not have an understanding of military experience and military culture. And so there was a disconnect between the client and the service provider. So our approach is that we bring veterans together who understand one another's experience, and we have a curriculum that is guided by professional psychologists who have undergone special training with us to understand military experience and culture. But also the group that we're delivering is also facilitated by 2 returning graduates. So veterans who have been through the program, and they come back to facilitate as peer supporters, and they act as the bridge between the psychologists, who are not always, but usually civilians, and the military participants on the program. So they help us build trust. They help us understand the culture, the language, the experience, so that we can build cohesion in the group and start the work therapeutically and in terms of helping their transition. So that's the program that we deliver. We have modified it due to COVID. Obviously, we've incorporated a single phased delivery, and we incorporate social distancing and PPE, but we have continued to deliver throughout COVID. So that's the rundown on our program. And sorry, I know there was a second component to your question, but I've forgotten what that was.
Yeah, what kind of relationship that you and your organization have with Veterans Canada, Veterans Affairs?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're a registered service provider. So we are, essentially what that means is that for clients who attend our program, who are clients of Veterans Affairs and who have a particular type of claim which is eligible to cover our program, then Veterans Affairs pays for the cost of their attendance. So they pay us on a per client basis for eligible veterans who attend our program. Again, that makes up about 15%, 1/5 of the veterans who attend our program. The remaining 85% at this moment, we raise the funds as a charity to deliver the program to them at no cost. Any veteran who attends is always delivered the service entirely free of charge. But for those who are eligible, we receive a per client payment from Veterans Affairs.
Thank you so much, Ms. Valdez.
Ms. Valdez, you have almost 1 minute. Please go ahead.
I don't have much time. Really appreciate you both so much. I'm a survivor of trauma, so everything you're saying and sharing is very important. Really quick, just around your experience, Mr. Ross, that transition period for our veterans is so critical. What do you think is the key recommendation to really help our veterans during that transitional time?
Well, I think thank you for the question. I think it needs to start before the veterans are leaving service. I think there needs to be a phase from serving into veteran affairs. There needs to be a bridge between the two that I think would be beneficial, particularly if the veteran is leaving for a medical discharge of some sort. It's critical that they get into VAC as soon as possible and that it's as easy as possible for them to receive those services.
Thank you so much. And I guess I don't have much time.
Yes, no, it's over. Thank you, MP Valdez. So now we have two other interventions for 2.5 minutes each. And I invite Mr. Luc Desilets to start, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Thorne, can you tell me about how many veterans you support annually? An approximate number, please.
Absolutely. So approximately per year, we have between 175 to 200 veterans who attend our program. Each veteran who attends receives roughly 50 hours worth of counseling. So we deliver the program over a 5-day period. It is fairly intensive. We are continuing to expand. We want to serve more. For reference to 50 hours of counseling is the equivalent roughly of 1 year of seeing a psychologist weekly. So the work that we do is very in-depth with a relatively small number of people, but we are continually expanding year over year.
Great. Mr. Ross, how many members do you have in your organization?
We're a pretty new organization and we don't have an official membership yet. We work with about 200 veterans currently. Mostly through informal Facebook groups that are private.
Great, excellent, thank you. Mr. Thorne, I'll come back to you. You referred earlier to a transition program. I'm sensitive to that, and I think the whole committee is, because we know there are major issues when people leave the armed forces and find themselves in another department. So the transfer of files and other issues. So could you give us one recommendation for this committee related to the transition to Veterans Affairs from the Armed Forces? Thank you.
Absolutely. But thank you very much for the question. And we have an unofficial motto. We say we're transition focused and trauma informed, but everything that we do through our program is with the aim of aiding that transition from military to civilian life. And for the recommendation, I would absolutely echo what Mr. Ross said, is we need earlier intervention in that period where people are transitioning from the Canadian Forces to the status of veterans and to Veterans Affairs Canada. And what's needed there is education, psychosocial education about the process of transition, how it affects individuals so they can understand what is happening, and services that are available to them at that critical moment.
Merci infiniment. Thank you so much to you too.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. And I would like to invite MP Blaney for the last questions, please. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. This has been fantastic. So I thank both the witnesses again. I'm going to come to you, Mr. Thorne. You talked about your organization and the fact that you raise 85% of the funds and then about 15% come from Veterans Affairs. So first of all, I just want to thank you. Thank you for providing services for free to veterans so that when they email you at 2 a.m, something can happen, because that really is a cycle that we should see emulated, because when people need the help and they're ready for it, the faster the better. So I guess I have 2 questions for you. One is the 15% that you receive from from VAC. You said if they meet the eligibility criteria. You said that several times, so I'd like to know what the eligibility criteria is. And part 2 of that question is, has the eligibility criteria changed over the past 9 years that you've been providing services? And the next question is, how do you fundraise the 85%?
Thank you very much for the question. So first and foremost, has the eligibility criteria changed? I believe so, yes. I'm not entirely sure in what way the processes have changed, but what I can say is that historically, 25 to 30% of the clients who have attended our programs have been covered by Veterans Affairs funding, and that has dwindled year over year. And now we're looking at 15%, perhaps even less in the previous 2 years. What they need to be eligible is typically they have to be on the vocational rehabilitation program, the VOC rehab program. Now, only a very small number of veterans who seek Veterans Affairs services will actually fall under that category. In a VOC rehab program, you're typically actively case managed, and we need active case management in order to speak to a case manager to have their attendance approved. That is becoming increasingly difficult, and we are getting far more no's than we are getting yes. And again, far more no's than we did several years ago. Finally, where we raise the funds, largely from other foundations, charitable organizations across Canada. The Royal Canadian Legion, True Patriot Love have been big, long-time supporters of our organization, and from the Canadian public as well, and Canadian corporations.
Thank you, Ms. Blaney. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. So that's all the time that we have. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank our witnesses for their contribution and contribution on that study, and also for the work. And our witnesses were from the Rainbow Veterans of Canada, Mr. Todd Ross, co-chair, and also from the Veterans Transition Network, Mr. Oliver Thorne, executive director. Thank you so much, both of you. Et là, je voudrais demander...
I would like to ask committee members if I have consent to adjourn the meeting. I see no objections, so I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of you, as well as all staff with us during this meeting, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Bon après-midi.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.